Now, between here and San Francisco, that's where I came in. And if you look right back over here, you'll see my picture. I had a gold mine in Montana, and that gold mine was doing fairly well. This was after the Civil War. I was a sergeant in the Civil War, by the way. Now, my gold mine was doing fairly well, but the Wells Fargo agent in that town wanted my claim. And so he sent a couple of heavies out to turn off the water. No water, no gold mine. I had to leave, but I swore I would take steps against Wells Fargo, and that's what led eventually to all of my robberies against Wells Fargo. The gentleman bandit, partly because of something that happened during one of the stagecoach robberies. There was a lady passenger on board the stagecoach that I was robbing. I mean, this is the infamous Black Bart. Everybody had heard about me. She became quite upset, and she threw her purse right out the window of the stagecoach. Well, being a gentleman, I walked over, I picked up the lady's purse, and I handed it right back to her, and I said, "No, thank you, ma'am. I only robbed Wells Fargo." I robbed 28 Wells Fargo stagecoaches, all in the Sierras between Mariposa and the Oregon border. That's 250 miles, and I walked every bit of it, time and time again. I did not have a horse. Now, I'm looking for the trail, the routes that those Wells Fargo stagecoaches are going to be taking. And when I find that route, I sit there and wait for the stagecoach to come. And when it does, I put a flour sack over my face with 2 eye holes in it, and I jump out in front of that stagecoach with a double-barrel shotgun, just like this one. And I point it directly at the stagecoach driver, and in very proper English, I say to the driver, "Driver, if you please, would you throw down the strong box?" Now, it worked every time for 28 stagecoach robberies. Oh, and by the way, these robberies took place in an 8-year period beginning in 1875. And in 1883, I robbed my last stagecoach down near Copperopolis, close to Sonora, California. And in that robbery, the driver said no, he would not throw down the strong box. So I asked him why not, and he said because Wells Fargo had bolted the strong box down to the floor inside the stagecoach. So I told the driver, who was the only person on the stage that day, to get down off of the stagecoach, unhitch his horses, and take him to the top of the hill. I climbed inside the stagecoach with an axe, and with an axe I broke open that box. It was a wooden box with a lot of metal on it and a good lock. But I opened it up, and I took out about $4,800 worth of sponge gold. I put all that gold into my pockets, and if that wasn't enough, I also steal the U.S. mail. The miners used to put gold dust in those envelopes and send them home to their families. So I stuffed all of this into my pockets. Now I'm ready to get out of the stagecoach. But before I do, I take a quick look out the window of the stagecoach to see what that lone stagecoach driver is doing. When I look up on the hill, I see 2 men. The other man was a deer hunter, and he had a Henry 44 rifle. And the stagecoach driver had borrowed the deer hunter's rifle, and he had it pointed right at the door of that stagecoach, and that door was the only way out of the stagecoach for me. Well, I busted through that door running as fast as I could for the trees of the forest, and the driver fired 2 shots at me. Fortunately for me, the driver was a real bad shot. He couldn't hit the broadside of the stagecoach. Both shots missed. Well, I kept on running because I hadn't made it to the trees yet, and I hear the stagecoach driver being talked to by the deer hunter, and the deer hunter says to him, "Give me back my rifle, I won't miss." And he took a 3rd shot, and that 3rd shot went right over my left hand. It was cut and bleeding. So all I could do was to run and get out of there. They didn't get another shot at me, and so I ran and ran to get out of that area. I left all my camp stuff behind, and one of the things that I left behind was a handkerchief. It had the markings FX07, which was left by a laundry service there in San Francisco. Now, Wells Fargo was getting tired of having their stagecoaches robbed. They came to Placerville and hired our marshal, a man by the name of James Hume. Now, James Hume was a very, very smart lawman, sort of a Sherlock Holmes of that day. He took that handkerchief to San Francisco and he went to 93 laundries with it. And at the 93rd laundry, the man said, yes, we had cleaned that handkerchief. That is our mark. FX07 belonged to that laundry. Well, he looked in his book and he said, the handkerchief belongs to Mr. Charles Boles. This is the real Black Bart. Well, they come knocking at my door, and in one hand they've got the handkerchief, and the other they've got a pistol. And they're talking to me for quite a while, and I finally admit to the 28th Stagecoach robbery, and I gave them back the gold from that robbery as well. Now, they look all around my room for evidence, because there's going to be a trial, and they found my double-barrel shotgun. They opened that shotgun up, and there were no shotgun shells on the inside of the gun, and they looked all over my room for those shotgun shells, and they could not find them anywhere. So they asked me, Mr. Boles, is this your shotgun that you used in the robberies? And I said, yes, gentlemen, it is. And they said, we cannot find any shotgun shells. Where are they? I said, gentlemen, while it is my shotgun that I used in the robberies, I never bought any shotgun shells, I never loaded the gun, and I never fired it. I robbed 28 Wells Fargo stages with an empty double-barrel shotgun. It's absolutely true. It was never fired in any of the robberies. Didn't make any difference to the judge. I was sentenced to 6 years in San Quentin prison. Well, after 4 years in San Quentin prison, the men at Wells Fargo were starting to get a little nervous because in 2 years I was going to be out of prison, probably robbing their stagecoaches again. They had to come up with a plan to keep me from robbing their stagecoaches. And this is what they came up with, according to William Randolph Hearst, who owned the Hearst newspaper empire in San Francisco. They came to the prison, they met with me, and they said to me, Mr. Boles, you have now been in prison for 4 years, but you still have 2 more years yet to serve. How would you like to be released from prison today? Yes, I said, I would love to be out of here. But I said, what's the catch? And they said, the catch is this. You have to promise us that you will never rob another Wells Fargo stagecoach as long as you live. And we will pay you $125 a month not to rob our stagecoaches. That's equivalent to almost $4,000 a month now. It was a lot of money. Well, I accepted their offer. It's a very good offer, but everywhere that I went in San Francisco, the agents were following me, as were the reporters that worked for Mr. Hearst. Well, I got tired of being followed, so one day I got on the train headed down the Central Valley of California, and sure enough, the agents and the reporters got on the train with me. We traveled down to Visalia, a nice little farming community down in the central area of California, and there I got off the train. The men all followed me over to a restaurant, and we sat there and had a nice afternoon having lunch. And while we're talking, whiling away the time, I snuck out the back door of that restaurant. I finally found that I'd gone to the wharf in Seattle, Washington, booked passage on a clipper ship named the Empress of China, and that ship was on the high seas. There's no recorded history of Black Bart from that time on. I never received the $125 a month that Wells Fargo had promised me, but my guess is that the real Black Bart left those fellows down in Visalia, came right back up here into the gold country, and dug up the gold from the other 27 robberies. And when he got on that ship in Seattle, Washington, he lived happily ever after on Wells Fargo's gold. Now, they call me the poet Bandit because I would write poetry while I was waiting for the stagecoach to come. And after the robbery, I would leave the poem in the broken strongbox for James Hume to find. It was my method of taunting James Hume. Now, one of the poems goes like this. Here I lay me down to sleep, to wait the coming morrow, perhaps success, perhaps defeat, and everlasting sorrow. Let come what will, I'll try it on, my condition can't be worse. And if there's money in that box, 'tis money in my purse. Black Bart. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much.